Hey guys, Chris Clothier here with the Grind Podcast with another episode. This week, we are talking about a topic for real estate investors who are looking to buy that investment property far from home, pros and cons of buying a new property, newly constructed from the ground up versus buying a property that was renovated. At the same time, we're going to talk a little bit about, for those investors that kind of like are looking to do it themselves, what are the pros and cons? If you're looking to renovate an older property, maybe in the middle of town, versus buying a brand new one in an outside neighborhood as an investment. What are the, kind of what's the ups and downs, pros and cons of each of these strategies? And the reality is that they both come with costs. They both come with advantages. They both come with, there's lots of reasons to do each of them. So I just thought we would take a moment here to go through a few of them. Let's start with new construction. I want to talk a little bit about the kind of the ups and the downs there of new construction. I would say the biggest pro of new construction is the fact that if done right and if purchased right, then you can really put CapEx off for the first decade, maybe even a little bit longer. All of this depends on how the property was, of course, built by the builder. Do you trust the person who built the home and that kind of thing? And did they cut corners or did they go really high end on the quality? But for the most part, when you're looking at a new property, everything about it is new. So components should be in working order. You should have everything up to code. And so therefore, from electric to, the wiring to the spacing of different materials, different pieces, the level of the materials used. I mean, there's a lot of codification that goes into building a new house, and new homes that are inspected have to meet those codes. That's a major positive to looking to buy a home that was newly constructed. Some of the downside to that exact same thing, though, is that with those new materials comes all of the new material cost. Comes the cost of the dirt. Comes the cost of preparing the dirt. You're paying for the concrete. You're paying for the wood. You're paying for every piece of plastic and wire and component that goes into the property itself, everything. And you pay for all of it at today's pricing. The benefit, obviously, of buying something that's older is that you oftentimes are able to buy at yesterday's prices, meaning that when you're buying a home that needs a lot of work, a lot of renovation, you're not paying for the dirt again. You're not paying for the concrete again. You're oftentimes not paying for many of the pieces of the home itself. You've got some renovation work to do, but you're not having to start back from scratch. The new builds, built from the ground up, they generally use brand new materials, and so therefore there comes with that, we'll call it that added cost. But it also comes with added peace of mind, because with that cost, you can generally feel like you're not going to have any CapEx expenses, as I said, for the first decade. If you have some form of a warranty from the home builder, then you end up with a warranted house, at least for a period of time anyway, where should anything come up, should anything happen, at least it's covered by the builder. So I would say the biggest pros that I know of are the fact that everything should be new and you should have a predictable cost structure for a short period of time anyway. We all know that if you're going to rent a property out, tenants, residents, renters, they're going to do what they're going to do to a property, however it is you look at them. Treat your residents right, and they'll treat your property right. But not everybody, buys into that philosophy. So that being said, outside of any damage caused by a renter, you should be able to expect a relatively low cost of ownership for a few years with a new construction house. Now, the downside is that you're often paying for that on the front end. So as I said earlier, you're paying for that new property. You're paying for that new area. You're paying for that. Everything is new. And believe me, nothing is cheap. Everything is high priced today. But, with that higher price, and especially if you're using, all things being equal, if you use some form of financing, let's just use a 30-year mortgage as an example. If you use a 30-year mortgage to finance your property, you're able to spread that cost out over the next 30 years. that's nothing to be, that's certainly something to be aware of. It kind of mitigates some of what you lose by buying something brand new, because you're paying such a high price. But you do get to leverage that out over 30 years. So those are some of the biggest advantages and disadvantages I see with buying something brand new. Of course, you get a warranty, but you're paying full price, and you're paying at today's pricing, but everything should be new and reliable. So, it's kind of that catch-22. You're getting, in most cases, what you have paid for. On the flip side of that, we look at a house that is, 25, 35 years old, newly renovated. What is it going to be like? Well, right off the bat, it should be less expensive, at least, and look, we're talking about from a 60,000 foot view here. So you get down in, narrowed in scope down to individual properties. And some of this may not always pan out the way I'm saying it right here, but you're thinking of a renovated house as the dirt's paid for, the concrete is paid for, how was the building framed up? It's paid for. The shingles paid for. The AC paid for. It paid for once anyway. Now you're going to come back through and things that need to be renovated and replaced. Well, if that roof needs to be replaced, it's discounted when you're buying it. If the AC doesn't work, it should be discounted when you're buying it. So one way or the other, the money for that should be built into the deal. And when you're all said and done, you should be able to own that property for less than what you would have paid for a new property. Again, you can leverage this out over 30 years. So you're able to take advantage of a 30-year mortgage and be able to drive your holding costs down. But if it costs you less to get involved, that's a good thing. The reality, some people think that, brand new houses, they don't have the same value as an older house for a reason of, and this is kind of silly, but it's true, of like trees and shrubbery and that kind of thing. A lot of new neighborhoods, man, they're just flattened down, and then they build these houses up and they throw a tree in the front yard that's 6 feet tall. And, you got to wait 30 years for it to, grow to full maturity, where you go buy, houses that need to be re-renovated, or houses that need to be renovated in some form of an urban area or downtown area or the inner city or anything along those lines. And you've got oftentimes big trees, lots of mature shrubbery, and just different things that people are looking for. It's so subjective, but you just never know what you're going to find with new and old. Same thing goes with schools. A lot of times new houses are built in the path of progress. Okay. But that doesn't always come with all of the same services. So path of progress, are there new schools out there? Well, I don't know. That should be something that's looked at. Can you get a house and renovate it closer to a school that you like? That would certainly be an advantage over buying a new house with a neighborhood or a school that maybe you don't know about. There's just a lot to consider when you're looking at, do I buy a new construction house or do I buy a renovated home? And for those that are doing it yourself, this is a really, really big contentious point right here. When you're buying new construction, oftentimes you can put a down payment in, something small. And let's say that they're going to take 3 to 4 months to finish the house. Well, it doesn't cost you anything else during that 3 to 4 months. You put your down payment in. When you're ready to close, now your bank gets involved and brings a majority of the money to the closing. That's really the only time that you're getting involved. Perhaps you need to make some choices and some decisions on some finishes or something along those lines, but there's really not a lot of other work for you to be doing. But if it's a rehab that you're doing yourself, man, that's a full-time job. That suddenly becomes, I've got to do everything start to finish. If you can do that and you're going to build something new, maybe you should be a home builder to begin with, right? I mean, it's if you know how to build a house, most of the time there's going to be a home builder involved. But if you can do it yourself, man, knock yourself out. If you want to do the renovation yourself, again, that's on you. But, for me, the advantages of a renovated home versus new construction come down a lot of times to how much time do I have? How much money do I want to spend? What location are the houses in? And then I want to look back at the rest of my portfolio. I've got a relatively young portfolio, but I do have some older houses in there. So, and what's really funny is that I can't ever pick which one is going to perform better this year versus next year versus last year, that kind of thing. I could have a brand new house that performs fantastic, and then I could have one of the oldest houses on there that I hadn't been renovated in 5 years, or I did the renovation 5 years ago, and a resident just loves it, takes care of it, and stays for another 5 years. You never know what's going to attract that long-term resident, which I guess that kind of really brings us to that final point when it comes to these new constructions versus infills and these, renovated houses. How much demand is there for where you're going? That's one of the things to really be watching on new builds. Is there a lot of demand? Is it near other developments? Is it near, major roadways? Is it near grocery stores and shopping and public transportation? What's it near? Because it needs to be near those things in order to create a thriving neighborhood, a thriving community. And I don't know that you don't want to be the first. There's nothing wrong with being the first out into a neighborhood, and especially if it's a rental property, but there's not going to be a lot of traffic. How long is it going to take you to get a property rented? These are questions you need to ask. So I love buying new builds. I've done it. As a company, we build 100 houses a year. I think they're fantastic, but we're looking at all these things before you are as an investor. We're looking at what's the demand going to be, what's the path of progress, what's going in around, how the schools. The same thing with every house that we buy that's an infill renovation. So we're always looking around to see how are these houses doing, how are they going to perform, what's better for us, what's the demand from our investors. I think we found a nice sweet spot. About 10% of what we do is new build, new construction. And when investors are coming to us to buy these, they are usually buying new construction to fill in their portfolio, to build it out, to kind of round it out with something new versus something old that's already in there. I have a lot of investors that like to do both. They'll buy something brand new and something old, mix them together, and you've got a nice cost average home or cost average portfolio. So those are a few things to look at. There's pros and cons to both. Those are a few things that you need to look at as an investor if you're trying to figure out which one do I want to buy or how do I want to build out my portfolio. My advice is you'd probably want a little bit of both. Doesn't really matter what you start with. All right, guys, that was a little faster than normal right there. That was only about a 12-minute. Hopefully you enjoyed the podcast. Got a little bit out of that with the new construction versus an infill or a renovated home. Until we get a chance to come again and talk again, guys, make sure if you have questions for me, you send them to me. If you want to interact with me on Bigger Pockets or on email or on our REI Nation Profiting from Passive Real Estate Facebook group, look, jump in there. I'm happy to connect with everybody. Love interacting, love engaging. So if you have questions or comments, let us know. And until we meet back here at this podcast, guys, you guys commit to the grind. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.